All right, let's get into a really deep and honestly kind of confusing moment from the sutras. Right on the edge of his final nirvana, the Buddha, the guy who literally ended all suffering, says he has a backache. It's a paradox that stumped even his most devoted followers, and the answer he gives, well, it reveals one of the biggest secrets in all of his teachings. So yeah, this is the big question, right? It seems to completely contradict everything the Buddha taught. If he can still get sick, what does enlightenment even mean? But this wasn't just some random complaint. It was a very deliberate act, a final lesson, and we're going to unpack exactly what he was trying to show everyone. So here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start with the paradox itself, which is pretty shocking. Then we'll see the doubt it created through the eyes of a major disciple. After that, we'll uncover the Buddha's secret teaching, and finally, dig into this incredible idea of non-duality that's at the heart of it all. Okay, so let's set the scene. The Buddha is about to enter his final nirvana. This is it, the ultimate liberation. All of his followers are gathered around waiting for some final epic teaching. And what happens? He lies down and tells them his back hurts. Just think about that contradiction for a second. This is the man who taught the path to ending all suffering, or dukkha. His whole life's work was about pulling out the very root cause of pain. And now here he is, apparently in pain himself. You can just imagine the confusion and doubt that shot through the crowd. And it wasn't just the newcomers who were confused. The great deity Brahma, who was one of his most senior disciples, actually steps up to voice what everyone was thinking, and he really doesn't hold back. He asks the questions that we'd probably be asking too. This is such a powerful moment. Brahma gets right in there and basically asks the Buddha, hey, is this a trick? Your body is supposed to be like a diamond, indestructible, totally beyond sickness. So why are you showing us this? He's pretty much asking if this is all some kind of cruel prank, right before he leaves them for good. Now, underneath Brahma's question, there's this really deep existential fear. They were terrified that if the Buddha's enlightened body could just break down and die like anything else, well then maybe nirvana wasn't a real, lasting freedom. Maybe it was just nothing, like a rock crumbling into dust. So the Buddha hears this doubt. He feels their fear, and he starts to answer. But it's not some simple, oh, I pulled a muscle. Instead, he begins to reveal that this whole thing, the backache, the confusion, it's all a deliberate teaching. It's kind of like a piece of performance art with cosmic level implications. And this brings us to this really crucial term, the final secret manifestation. The Buddha explains that his backache isn't a flaw or a weakness, it's a purposeful show. It's a secret teaching, not because it's supposed to be hidden, but because the meaning is so profound. You can't see it just by looking at the surface. So, what was the purpose of this demonstration? He says, I am showing you this illusory sickness to show you that your own sickness, your own suffering, your own cycle of birth and death is also illusory. He's basically using his own body as a giant mirror to show us the true nature of our own lives. All right, now hang on, because this is where the teaching goes from a pretty straightforward answer to a totally mind-bending idea that is at the very core of Mahayana Buddhism. He's about to take what we think of as two completely separate realities and smash them into one. So, on one side you've got our reality, right? Our bodies, which are made of these 5 aggregates, the skandhas. They feel pain, they get sick, and they're stuck in samsara, this endless loop of birth and death. And then, over on the other side, you've got the Buddha's reality, the Dharma body, which is basically the fabric of reality itself, and nirvana, total freedom. Seems like they're total opposites, doesn't it? And then the Buddha just drops this bombshell. He says these two realities, our suffering and his freedom, our physical body and his ultimate body, samsara and nirvana, they are not two, they're non-dual. They aren't actually separate things at all. He gives this amazing analogy of a dream. He says, look, when you're in a dream, the happiness and the terror feel totally real. But when you wake up, you don't think the dream was some separate, other reality. You just realize the dream and your waking life are both just different expressions of your own mind. They're non-dual. Our suffering is just like that dream. And get this, he uses some really strong language here. He says that this mistaken idea, the idea that you have to destroy suffering to get to some other separate place called nirvana, is actually the path of delusion. The real path is waking up and seeing they were never separate to begin with. Okay, so this all builds up to this massive final conclusion. If suffering and freedom are non-dual, not two, then what else is? And according to this final secret teaching, the answer is everything.
He just starts listing all the opposites that define our lives. Think about it. Good and evil, suffering and joy, friends and enemies. Even the sacred and the everyday mundane stuff. He says all of these things that seem to be fighting each other are just different flavors of one single unified reality.
It all boils down to this incredible statement. Everything is the Buddha nature of as is. What that means is that everything we see, feel, think, and experience, including a backache, including our own confusion, is nothing other than the radiant, living expression of this single enlightened reality. Nothing is outside of it. And that brings us right back to where we started. The Buddha's backache wasn't a bug. It was a feature. It was the most brilliant, compassionate teaching he could possibly give. By showing sickness from within a body that has no sickness, he proved that even the things we call bad or painful are inseparable from the enlightened nature of reality itself. And that's the final lesson. It turns the question away from him and points it straight back at us. If everything, from a simple backache to the ultimate state of nirvana, is already the perfect expression of this one reality, what is it in our own minds that keeps insisting on seeing it all as broken, separate, and needing to be fixed? That's definitely something to chew on.